President Biden's broken borders and his DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas testifying on Capitol Hill today, ducking responsibility for what we're seeing, this humanitarian crisis down there at the border. He says the administration has effectively managed, his word, effectively managed the flow of migrants. He's also blamed former President Trump and called on Congress to fix this crisis. All right, let's welcome in now Texas Land Commissioner and candidate for Texas Attorney General George P. Bush. Great to have you with us, Commissioner.
Great to be with you, John.
I don't know if you've been following this hearing closely with Secretary Mayorkas, but here's something that he said referring to Congress needing to fix the crisis. Take a listen.
We inherited a broken and dismantled system that is already under strain. It is not built to manage the current levels and types of migratory flows. Only Congress can fix this. Yet, we have effectively managed an unprecedented number of non-citizens seeking to enter the United States and interdicted more drugs and disrupted more smuggling operations than ever before.
Now, what we'll never know is how many drug trades they didn't stop. Also, for them to blame this on, it's not our fault. We inherited this problem. Doesn't sound like anyone in this administration is willing to step up and take responsibility.
Well, he's actually factually incorrect. The numbers don't lie. The fact is we had close to 2 million encounters with illegal immigrants last fiscal year. If he lifts Title 42 and is successful in that process, that figure is estimated by his own DHS to perhaps double to 4 million encounters. That doesn't include the gotaways that are undetected by federal law enforcement. Look, Secretary Mayorkas, late in 2021, sent out a memo to ICE agents to not arrest illegals within our country unless it's incident to a violent crime. This administration has chipped away at a law and order and following the Constitution. As an Attorney General candidate, I'm proposing the idea, similar to what Arizona has done, to first overturn U.S. versus Arizona to allow just local law enforcement to do the job that this administration is unwilling to do first. And then second, to assert our own sovereignty on our own border, which is what we're attempting to do to just create some sense of calm and order to the process. This secretary, regretfully, has decided to politicize the most important constitutional responsibility, arguably, that any president have, and that's defending its own communities, its own people, its own states under our Constitution.
I mean, this is really a big change, especially it's a contrast to what we just heard from Alejandro Mayorkas saying only Congress can solve this. But we've seen how effective the states can be, not by choice, but just because they have to. Both Texas and Arizona have had to deploy their own resources. And, we saw this week that can be fatal. It shouldn't be a Texas National Guardsman down there doing that job in the first place.
Absolutely right. And he's only correct to the extent that Congress can close loopholes. That's when I talk to Border Patrol agents every day, and I was just in the Rio Grande Valley, which encounters 40% of all illegals across the entire U.S.-Mexican border. They tell me that we need to close one of the biggest gaping loopholes in applying for asylum in our country, and that is reinstalling the Remain in Mexico policy. And that's where President Trump was absolutely right by establishing bilateral agreements with the three triangle countries south of Mexico to say that if you're going to apply for asylum, you got to do it in your country of origin, not within our own country, because we know that that process is being abused. Look, I just flew back from El Paso to my campaign headquarters here in Austin, and there were Haitian asylees, there were Afghan asylees. Folks from all over the world are taking advantage of this gaping loophole that the Congress is not addressing. But more importantly, we have a vice president that spends more time in the air in Air Force Two than actually on the ground and does not install any level of confidence that she's going to secure our border, and a president that doesn't understand the difference between Title 42 and the FAA mask mandate that he's implementing. For some reason, he thinks that health orders should only apply to American citizens, not to illegals.
Yeah, that's the key point right there, and why so many people find this just ridiculous that they would do that. I also want to play Jen Psaki and how she talked about Bishop Evans. He's the Texas National Guard soldier who died there on the border. A lot of people said she sounded cold. Here she is.
Of course, we are mourning the loss of his life, and we are grateful for the work of every National Guardsman. I would note that the National Guard work for the states, and so he is an employee of the Texas National Guard, and his efforts and his operation were directed by there, not by the federal government.
And again, you can kind of hear the common thread between that soundbite and what we heard from Mayorkas today. Not our fault.
Well, last time I checked, the president of the United States is within the chain of command, and that's the disappointment that a lot of people have in border communities. Whether you may recall last year when Border Patrol officials were on horses trying to address the Haitian surge of asylees in Del Rio, and yet this president called them racist, and it conjured up images of slavery when these law enforcement officials are doing their best to do their job. And Texas National Guardsmen, we have 12,000 that keep the watch. That number probably will escalate, along with Texas DPS troopers that are enforcing state criminal trespassing law and doing the job that many federal agents feel either overwhelmed or unable to do. And as Border Patrol will share with you, half of them are processing or changing diapers, not keeping the watch. So it's states like ours that are doing this valiant work. The least that Jen could do is just say, we mourn his loss.
Yeah, they could put out a statement. They didn't even do that. They could have released a statement. You know, they also could have released a statement exonerating those other Customs and Border Patrol officers they accused of whipping Haitian migrants. But that's too much to ask, of course, George. One last question for you, kind of on a personal note. What is it like for George P. Bush around the Bush family Easter dinner table when you say President Trump was right? Do they all, bite your head off?
No, I think he gets credit on certain issues. So, and I'm like I kind of joke, sometimes Thanksgiving's a little quiet around the Bush family table. But on this issue, regretfully, it's made for good politics for the Republican Party. Like I said, I was just in the Valley. It's creating Republicans overnight, but it's just bad policy for our country. And I think more and more Americans are seeing that, more Hispanics, more Texas Democrats are coming over to our side. And it's not only going to be a red wave, it's going to be a red tsunami in 2022 because of these policies that we've reversed. And President Trump deserves a lot of credit on that front.
Well, I think it obviously speaks a lot to your work as a land commissioner, the fact that the voters of Texas put you in a runoff with Ken Paxton, who's received the endorsement from President Trump. That obviously can sway things in a state like Texas, but you're in there. That runoff is coming up, but we'll talk to you soon. Texas Land Commissioner and current candidate for Attorney General in Texas, George P. Bush. Thanks, George.
Thank you, John.